Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it is me, Mark, the Funky Bunch, and welcome to episode 221 of Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. This is another of our continuing looks at the G.I. Joe Disavowed era, the Devil's Due run. And today we are talking about issue 16, a one-parter called The Family from Devil's Due in 2003. If you're new to the show, you can find all of the details over at the website talkingjoe.co.uk. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, it's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, stop sucking up, Tim. It's you're showing me up again.
I'm so glad all of our listeners are here for Mark and me. It's great.
Yeah, you're their favorite. Yeah, we know. Get on with it. Okay. Rounding out our crew, it's G.I.J., it's Jay Cordray.
Hello, Joe fans. Man, it feels like forever since I've talked to you guys. How have you been?
It's been quite a week, quite a couple of days. Things have happened in the world, in our own lives, with G.I. Joe. Things have happened.
Things have happened.
Who would have known about that? Who would have guessed about that asteroid? Crikey.
But I'm so glad that Star Brigade was able to stop it in time. Thank you.
The thing I was going to mention before we get into it is this beautiful volume that just came out just very recently, G.I. Joe World on Fire by Paul Allor, and most of the art by his art partner Chris Evenhouse, with various other guest artists. And so it's a 10-issue collection wrapping up this new continuity of G.I. Joe, and it's handsomely presented all in one volume, which I find very satisfying to see that printed in one go. Let's sort of go into all of the details because we could talk about it at some point in the future. But good to see that collected all in one go. Tim, sort of headline feelings. I'm presuming you've been collecting and reading this as it's been coming out.
I have all of the issues, and I've read the first 3, and I like it. And I'm very much looking forward to reading them all. I feel a certain urgency in finishing the series now that the book is out and more people will be catching up with it. Also, Diana Davis, Joe fan, friend from the internet and conventions, and also consultant on G.I. Joe comics for IDW, is a big proponent of this series, and I take that recommendation seriously. And I would say very specifically, Mark, that we'll do an episode or several on this series in the future.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
It's not a promise, it's a threat.
It's a threat. And what's nice about it is that it is its own thing, and it's not so much in the shadow of what's come before in terms of different continuities, because it is very much its own continuity, trying to be its own thing, and possibly what's happened with some of the other continuities is they have had this shadow of what's come before them. Even the IDW Chuck Dixon universe, has steered very close to the ARAH Hammer universe at times. So it's there's not always a huge amount that separates them, but this is very much its own thing. So an interesting take. But we weren't here to talk about that. We were here to talk about Devil's Due issue 16.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read.
So, creative team. Story, Josh Blaylock. Pencils, Tim Seeley. So, first full issue from Tim Seeley, who becomes the regular penciler with, I think, issue 24. Inks, Corey Hampshire. Colors, Hi-Fi Design. Letters, Dreamer Design. Copy edits, Scott Whirl. Graphic design, Mike Norton. Military consultation, Tim Evere. And let's go on and see what adorns the front of these books.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So, cover to this issue, number 16, is by Francis Manipool and Corey Hampshire. Presumably doing the inks, but I think he's a penciler in his own right as well. So we've got Cover Girl on the front. So we've got a young lad sat down, cross-legged, drawing with some Crayola. And then behind him, we've very confusingly got Snake Eyes with long black hair just over his shoulder, looking at a bit of paper. I don't know what's going on. Oh no, it's Spirit. That's what it is. Spirit in his black outfit.
In his Snake Eyes cosplay.
In his Snake Eyes cosplay. I mean, I think it's. I'm a fan of Francis Manipool generally. I think he's got a good flair for design. So I think it is an interesting and striking cover. What do you guys think?
I also like Francis Manipool's G.I. Joe work. He's an artist who, particularly after his 3 covers for G.I. Joe Declassified, the miniseries that tells the story before issue number 1 of the Marvel run, I always wanted him to come back and draw a full issue. His artwork looks like, and I mean this as a compliment, the sort of hot, post Jim Lee hot comics style of the late 90s and early 2000s. Though, he may have some influences beyond Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri. And so I like the drawing. In terms of the story that this tells and the sort of question that it poses or the sort of puzzle that it teases, this cover has always been lacking for me because we can't see what the kid is drawing on the paper, and several sheets are blowing in the wind, and he's torn several off that are in front of him in the grass, and Spirit is holding one, and Spirit seems a little concerned or like he's concentrating looking at this piece of paper, but whatever's drawn in it, it's on the other side, we can't see it. And there's no danger. A question is being asked, but I don't know what the question is. And so I don't know what the answer might be. And I don't know sort of how worried I should be, and I'm not engaged.
I can understand that. And I kind of agree. In a way, this whole issue it's a weird, when Mark and I were talking about this earlier, we'll kind of discuss this a little bit in Toy Talk later. There's a lot of mystery here. I mean, it's the whole thing is setting up a mystery, and so we're getting with one issue here, the opening chapter. So it's really hard to judge any of it. I feel like the cover doesn't exactly represent what happens in the issue. It's it hits all the main elements except there's no Snake Eyes. Cover Girl's there, Spirit's there, one kid is there. There's a scene in here where he's drawing with crayons. We have the drawings. But again, I mean, it's like, I'm not sure what kind of cover you would create to represent this story.
I do.
So yeah, I mean, with the fact that there is just so much mystery set up and unresolved here, I'm not sure what I would expect or what I would want this cover to be. As far as a drawing goes, I think it's a good enough drawing. The kid is kind of exaggerated in a lot of ways that I don't necessarily like. There's a book called, I think it was Creed, and the artist was Trent Zuniga, and he did like really, really exaggerated, like kids had real big tennis shoes and like bell bottoms almost, but they weren't like supposed to be bell bottoms necessarily. It was just an exaggerated drawing. And I feel like that's kind of what this kid looks like. Almost like the cover that Todd McFarlane did for a Korn album called Follow the Leader, kind of in that style. I don't really like that. I don't like that kind of exaggeration for G.I. Joe, especially when you put it in front of two Joes that are really detailed and really like, look at Spirit's abs. I mean, there's exaggeration in that. Okay, a really muscled guy, even if he puts on that kind of shirt, it's not going to cling to him. But you see that in every kind of comic, so that's not out of the ordinary. It's not playing with proportion the way that like the drawing of this kid speaks to me, or like Zuniga's artwork. I think that was the name. I'm not 100%. If I'm wrong, hopefully somebody will correct me. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's just a lot of questions about the story, where the story is going to go. I was really high on the story in the last two parts, and I will say before we get into this too much, this is probably the first issue that we've read of the series that makes me want to really pick up the next issue and see what's going to happen next.
Interesting.
Now, I haven't read any before, and that was kind of something that, you know, when we started doing this, like I've said, I haven't read these, so coming into these is all new to me, and I've decided not to read it all ahead. You know, I'm just reading them week to week, so I'm not going to know what happens beyond this until the next episode. But I'm really curious where we go from here.
But Jay, it looked like you threw down the gauntlet of a challenge there, not knowing what the cover should be, and it sounds like Tim is picking up that gauntlet and
Yes.
scrutinizing it.
Yeah, I can very clearly imagine a dynamic chase scene with a van or an SUV drawn by Mike Zeck for this issue, had this issue happened in the 80s, where one or two of these Joes is trying to stop the vehicular kidnapping of either this one kid or the two kids who look alike. What this cover is slow and quiet. And a lot of this issue is slow and quiet, just some Joes doing some investigating and a quick chat inside the government. But there is an action scene at the end. And in an action comic, I think that would be what you accentuate on the cover.
Yeah, like picture the cover from, I'm not sure what issue it was, one of the earlier ones, maybe 12, where there was a Joe on a motorcycle, and I think Major Blood was like hanging out of a door of a bus or a van or something like that, and they were kind of like, you know, fighting on the street, and it was a very, very kinetic, it was an action-packed cover, and definitely you could have done something with this. You're right, this is a much more contemplative cover. So like I said, it's weird. It's just a weird issue. It's a weird spot for where's the series going from here.
You make a good point about the sort of inconsistency or the different rules for the cover, where CoverGirl and Spirit are drawn more realistically and the kid is drawn more cartoony, right? There is that, you know, it's like Humberto Ramos and Joe Madureira and Ed McGuinness, right, in comics in the mid 90s and late 90s are bringing in a lot of influences from Japanese comics in how they exaggerate eyes and proportions. And I'm seeing some J. Scott Campbell here in Francis Menopul's approach to anatomy, both for the more realistic humans and also for the more cartoony human. Mark, you want to talk about the cover, or you want to jump into the issue?
I was just going to note on the back, we've got Spirit again from David Michael Beck. Something sort of slightly strange is happening with this composition, because we are kind of looking down, kind of almost over his shoulder, and seeing some footprints on the ground. But then, on the top half of the illustration, the background is the sort of mountains behind him and a sky. So I think something a little bit strange is happening.
You're saying the perspective isn't consistent because we're looking down in the bottom half of the drawing, but we're looking up in the top half of the drawing.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
It's almost with the Mindbender cover from a few issues ago, where there was a fisheye.
I do like how even though there's a muted quality to David Michael Beck's use of color, like things aren't bright in his covers. They're dim, they're hazy, they're sandy. I do like that he has a dominant color, so in the previous, that's 2 issues ago, it's all that sort of beige and brown for Roadblock and all the just red or blue of the Crimson Guard, and here it's just all green. It's a choice to paint the night sky green, and it totally works here. I don't question it. It doesn't seem like a mistake. It doesn't seem like too arty, and that green carries over into the what in reality would be his black costume, but in this lighting is a dark and muted green. And then you have a lot of green in the sand or dirt or rocks below him, which sand and rocks and dirt aren't green. So I really like the color work here, even if the perspective is a little confusing.
Okay, cool. Let's dig on into the issue. Jay, do you have a plot breakdown for us?
In Redding, California, a young autistic boy is kidnapped from his elementary school in broad daylight. Courtney Krieger, aka Covergirl, is called to the Joe's new underground base in Arizona. There she is briefed on the boy's kidnapping by Flint. Flint tells Covergirl to go with Snake Eyes and Spirit to investigate. Covergirl questions why the Joes are investigating a kidnapping and is told the order is need to know, so need to know in fact that even Flint does not know why. The Joes travel to California to speak to the boy's adopted parents. His parents tell them that the boy, Julius, has always been different, special. His mother says he's always been interested in history, politics, and science. Snake Eyes notices a strange drawing on the boy's desk and takes it with them. Firewall contacts the Joes and informs them of another attempted kidnapping of an autistic boy by a perp matching the same description as their suspect in nearby Oregon. She sends them a photo of the attempted victim, and it's identical to Julius. The Joes travel to Oregon and find similar strange drawing in the second child's room. The boy's father tells the Joes he received a phone call from the second boy's mother, a phone call that was abruptly cut off by the woman's screams. The Joes trace the call and catch up to the kidnapper and his 2 young victims. The mysterious man bests the Joes in hand-to-hand combat, and the boys leave with him willingly. As the Joes are scratching their heads, the kidnapper takes the boys to a secluded house in the wilderness and delivers them to Dr. Mindbender.
How do you guys feel about Tim Seeley as fill-in artist and upcoming regular series artist?
I like him. He's I think in a nutshell, I think he's got very strong storytelling chops. I think his figure work and the backgrounds and everything else, it looks nice and very competent. I like that he's got some specific kind of quirks that he brings to particular characters. So I like the way that Spirit has perpetually kind of squinted eyes where you can't. It's basically drawn as a solid line, much like Captain Marvel from DC. Shazam is often drawn. It's not necessarily the flashiest style, but I think there's some solid art chops there, and I remember being pleased at the time and being happy beyond that with the rest of his body of work. I thought it was very solid.
Seeley's pretty good. I don't have a whole lot of complaints with this. am disappointed that Badeau is not doing the artwork. I was really high on his art in our last episode. I thought that just his use of camera positioning and lighting, his figure work was really strong. I thought a lot of spots he really showed a good foundation for figure and storytelling. Seeley at this point I don't think is as strong with a lot of those points, so I think that there's it's for me it's kind of a drop from that issue to this one. That said, it still looks better than the reinstated arc, and definitely more appealing than Malfunction. So I'm not sure who's coming up next. Like I said, I really haven't looked even to the next episode or next issue, so I don't know what we've got coming up.
So Badeau returns as the main artist on the book from issue 17 up till about 23. So he does most of the next few issues, and then Seeley takes on as comes on as the main recurring artist. And yeah, I think at this point in time, Seeley is very new and inexperienced, so not with a huge amount of published comic art under his belt. And you might remember from the sort of the facts that I was giving in the first couple of episodes that I think that he turned down the opportunity to come onto the book as the artist for the initial arc. So we're what, 2 or so years on from that point here. So he's got a little bit more experience under his belt, but yeah, still a new and learning artist.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like this art.
Oh no.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Here come the nit-picker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe.
Timmy Finn.
No, he won't lie. Yes, he
Testify.
Anyone can see there's some
Criticism.
Anything that he don't know ain't a thing that's worth to know. Pull him back and let him go. Criticism. Here come the nit-picker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe.
Timmy Finn.
I'll start with something nice. Tim Seeley wrote and drew, and then for a long time just wrote with artistic collaborators, his creator-owned book Hack Slash, and that's a novel concept as a horror comic. It's not for me, but I think it's a cool concept. And when it got optioned a bunch of years ago, I thought, yeah, that could be a movie or a TV show. And he's written a lot for DC. He wrote Grayson, or he co-wrote it, which was the Dick Grayson sort of post-Nightwing series, and he wrote a bunch of Batman. And I think that's really impressive to go from a creator-owned book to drawing G.I. Joe to writing Batman. His art, his storytelling is clear and it's solid. As Mark says, his figure work, right? He can draw, clothes and faces and action. There is a straight up and down and a straight left and right quality to so much of what he draws, and I don't have a great way to explain this, but I'm gonna
camera positioning. That's where I thought that Badeau was stronger.
Okay, so yes, thank you. That's some of it. Some of it is character poses. Some of it is camera positioning. Again, these are comics. There's no cameras. We're using a movie term. But Seeley will often draw in 1-point perspective or a very boring 2-point perspective, when a more dynamic 2-point perspective or a little bit of 3-point perspective would make the scene much more interesting. And he can draw in 3-point perspective because he does so on page 2 in the middle panel where we're looking down at the teacher and the kids. That's 3-point perspective. It's not amazing, but he does it. He's often posing his characters straight up and down, and he's often composing elements of his background. Like where one wall meets another and you have a vertical line or a doorway or a couch. Those are all straight up and down lines. And that means it's 1 point perspective or a very boring 2 point perspective. And I think if I wasn't using art terms, if I didn't, in the back of my mind, I would find something about the storytelling and the character poses to be unadorned and not quite flat, but boring. And there are artists, like, I've always sort of seen a relationship, and this is just me, between Tim Seeley's work and Ron Lim's work. And Ron Lim has a certain unadorned, basic, certain flatness to his work in the last 10, 20 years, right? Mostly covers and some storybooks for Marvel. He doesn't really draw interiors anymore. But he had this really long run on Silver Surfer, and of course he did most of the Infinity trilogy for Marvel. And there's something that's more dynamic and volumetric about his work, particularly with the right inker. And I think of Ron Lim in terms of G.I. Joe because he did a tiny bit of later Devil's Due work, and he also did those 4 pages for the bench press pitch that never got published before this series started. What I'm seeing in Tim Seeley is an artist who learned to draw comics by looking at comics, not who learned to draw by looking at things, right? His trees, his houses, his cars, they all, if you squint, they look like trees and houses and cars. But if you actually look at the cars in this issue, they're not drawn well. They're just drawn almost adequately. And I see this in his faces, where every face, like, it's not even like he's doing, I mean, I see a lot of J. Scott Campbell, but I'm seeing like Roger Cruz, but I'm seeing Roger Cruz doing Joe Madureira, right? I'm not seeing J. Scott Campbell. I'm seeing Al Rio doing J. Scott Campbell, because Al Rio like filled in on Gen 13 when J. Scott Campbell wasn't drawing some issues before he came back for his final issue. I'm seeing a 3rd or 4th generation, like, this is what comics look like in 2003 style. And I find it really boring and unappealing. Nothing's ugly. Nothing's like bad. But like, you know, how Snake Eyes is like running after the kid when the kid gets kidnapped, when he's running after, you know, the car takes off and someone's yelling, "There he is, heading back for the van," and Snake Eyes is coming at us, right? Like, clearly Seeley is just looking at J. Scott Campbell's earlier G.I. Joe covers and sort of drawing that Snake Eyes. But like, that pose, he's just running straight at us. Like, there's nothing interesting or dynamic. There's no flair. And the one last thing I'll say about Seeley is...
There is a flare immediately behind Snake Eyes.
Ha! Thank you. There's a light flare, a lens flare. The one last thing I'll say about Seeley is, very last page of this comic book, facing the inside back cover, is an ad for another Image series called Core with a K, and it's penciled by Tim Seeley. And if you go back 2 issues of G.I. Joe, right, to our previous episode for all you Talking Joe listeners, that issue had a 3 or 4 page, 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5-page preview of Core, and the credits weren't listed, but this has got to be the same Core, right, K-O-R-E, and it's a team, looks kind of like G.I. Joe or Cobra, and they're crashing through a window, and there's some action stuff, and it's just all very boring. And it looks like someone who learned to draw comics, not by drawing real trees and real people and real faces and real hands and real rooms, but trees as they are drawn in comics and costumes and people as they're drawn in comics.
Yep, I think you hit it dead on. Like I said, he's not a bad artist. He just is a young artist and inexperienced. So I'll cut him a lot of slack for that. But like you said in an earlier episode too, Tim, this is G.I. Joe, you know. And if your artist is not, his A game needs to be up to the property.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the story.
Okay, in terms of the story, I was getting big X-Files vibes. So we've got a small team, mostly Spirit and Covergirl with Snake Eyes there in the background too, kind of in the Mulder and Scully vein, and it felt like a kind of different vibe to a kind of typical GI Joe story or book where they're kind of investigating a mystery, really, which isn't. I can't think of too many obvious parallels to other similar GI Joe stories.
And they're checking in with local law enforcement and interviewing victims or witnesses. They're like going down the list of how you investigate.
Yeah. And it's total X-Files though, like Mark said. You definitely get that vibe. And like I said, when we were talking about the cover, it's the very beginning of a mystery. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Can I go back to the cover for a second? Because I have a different approach. Thank you, Jay, for saying that, because it just gave me an idea. The other way that you would enhance this cover is you'd keep the image as it is, and you would go retro or old school, and you'd have some copy, like Cover Girl and Spirit investigate the mystery of the kidnapped twin, or like who is the let's.
Yeah, nobody ever does that anymore.
Very briefly, it was like 2004 or 2006. There was like a 5-issue run on one of the Star Wars comics from Dark Horse where they decidedly did cover copy like it was 15 years earlier. So you put a thing like an arrow box next to the kid, and it's like, what is the mystery? Who is this mysterious child, and how does he spell doom for G.I. Joe? It's like, but that's totally not cool, and you don't do that in 2003.
Yeah, I get it. And so in terms of the sort of the story, we've got these two kids, Julius and Alexander, who are orphans and have mysteriously vanished and being taken by an older child in the skull shirt, which I think at one point Cover Girl alludes to being almost like a Punisher shirt, but he's kind of cut off. She said pun dash. So you kind of got this mystery. I guess for both of you, this is probably the first time you're reading this issue. How much of a sense of mystery, of kind of going, what's going on here, did you get, or kind of are the clues big enough that it's obvious, what these kids are all about?
I don't entirely know what's going on. You said not to read one of the characters' file cards, so I didn't. I did accidentally get a glimpse of it, so I have some idea where we're going. I don't know how we get there, but I think that it builds it really well. And once again, I have to give Blaylock props for his continued improvement as a storyteller. There's little missteps, but you're going to have that. Yeah, it really interests me. Like I said, this is the first one that I finished, and I thought, what's going to happen next? And I was really curious to see what was going to happen next.
And yeah, I got the same sort of vibe about it in terms of this mystery being built and thinking, this is an interesting story, and this is one that hasn't been explored before in G.I. Joe. They are actually creating something brand new, and it is quite intriguing, and really getting that sense of curiosity as to where they're going to go with it. I think a good building block to something that we don't quite know what it will be as yet.
So I have not read this issue before, but I was paying attention as this series was getting published to all of the covers, and in the catalogs, I'd read some of the solicitations. I was paying attention to who was drawing it. A friend of mine was reading the series, so I do know where this is going. So in that regard, it's not a surprise. But my recollection from then is that though where it's going, I don't really want them to go there. This is a fun way to get there, and it feels, in keeping enough with G.I. Joe. Certainly the version of G.I. Joe that's going to mix a little bit of the TV cartoon with the comic.
Okay, cool. And I mean, sort of laying it out a little bit for the audience, we've got Julius and Alexander. And is the elder child named in the issue? Or is he go on unnamed? I can't remember now.
At the very last page, Mindbender calls him Hannibal.
Okay, so we've got Julius, Alexander, and Hannibal. So that's obviously an allusion to Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, and Hannibal
Hannibal Lecter
off of the A-Team.
We both went different directions on that one.
All great
Very,
military
very good,
leaders.
gentlemen. Very good. Thank you.
Or perhaps the Carthaginian general and statesman who commanded Carthage's main forces against the Roman Republic during the Second Punic War. Perhaps, I don't know.
That's less likely.
So I think the clues are there to be had and are fairly on the nose. I think if you've read before the Serpentor storyline, you'll have an inkling that having these names from great military leaders in history will probably be no coincidence that it might be linked to a Serpentor story. So I think most readers would be able to put those clues together pretty rapidly and figure out that, you know, these are the breadcrumbs that we are being dropped for us by the writer.
Now, to their credit, though, like I said, those clues are there, but this is one of those rare times when I'm reading something and, like you said, we kind of know where it's going, you know, without, you know, coming right out and saying it. What I don't know is how it's going to get there. I don't know how these pieces fit. And that's always kind of interesting when you are reading something or watching a movie and, you know, it's not spelled out for you.
Yeah, so we've got the payoff is the last page is that Hannibal, the elder child, has got these two younger children who appear to be twin brothers or clones or something, and Mindbender says, Hannibal, you made it just as I knew you would, and you have both of them. Now he will come to us. Curious.
Yeah, another mysterious clue.
If Blaylock wanted to withhold a little information, this isn't a criticism, this is just an idea. If their names are telegraphing too much, sort of who they are or what they are, maybe, you know, call one of them Alex, not Alexander, one of them Jules, not Julius, and I guess Hanny for Hannibal.
Han.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a scene in here that doesn't work for me, or it's sort of a half a scene. Mm-hmm. It's on page 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So CoverGirl pulls up in a car in Arizona at this roadside museum, and this ends up being one of these new 7 or 8 sort of spread out smaller G.I. Joe secret headquarters. And she sees Spirit, and they haven't seen each other in a while, so they have like a moment to recognize each other and be happy. And she says, how's it going? He says, as good as can be expected. I see you are as beautiful as ever. And she says, I was just about to make a joke about how you're in this lovely little shack, but now I'm all embarrassed. And then now they're inside, and he's pointing past him over down a hallway to some doors. He says, perhaps we should continue our conversation elsewhere. We're on a tight schedule. She says, the janitor's closet? I didn't know it was that kind of meeting, Spirit. I don't like this weird, flirty, inappropriate banter. Like, you know, G.I. Joe, you know, there was, you know, Destro and Baroness, Flint and Lady J. There are Snake Eyes and Scarlet. There are little bits and indications of attraction and relationship and bonding, but we don't have, historically in G.I. Joe, like flirting or sort of like inappropriate flirting and jokes. And
apart from maybe Clutch.
This dialogue here doesn't work for me at all. And I think what it's trying to do, particularly in the previous page, which is this like very 1995, 2000, 2003, like half page vertical panel. It's like, I have a skinny, attractive woman like walking towards the camera, and I'm going to draw all of her. And, you know, she's not wearing a bikini or anything. Like, she's wearing her costume, but, you know, she's drawn in an alluring and sexy way.
Gorgeous.
And she, you know, she's taking her glasses off, and she's not like tussling her hair, but the sun is behind her, and, you know, like her shirt is a little bit unbuttoned, and like the wind is kicking it up, and you can see her midriff, right? So like, fine.
Her midriff is exposed.
This character was a model before G.I. Joe, and in fact, her code name reminds you this. So this is fine. Like, CoverGirl's attractive. And I think that's what Spirit's dialogue is supposed to remind us of. Like, this isn't just any Joe. This is a very attractive Joe. But Spirit wouldn't say that. Spirit shouldn't say that. And her, like, joke back just doesn't feel like G.I. Joe.
I mean, yeah, he's not. Spirit isn't Roger Moore. You know, I can see
it would work better with Clutch or Shipwreck.
Yeah,
he should just say, like, good to see you again.
Yeah, on that splash where you can see her exposed midriff, there's also you can make out the staples. I think I could hear a tumbleweed go past then.
I think the tumbleweed is behind her car in Arizona, outside of this Americana museum. That's actually
yeah. No, I spotted that whole sequence, and I thought, no, that's not right.
There are a couple other sort of writing moments, like writing and art moments, that don't quite work for me. So a couple pages later, this team of 3 Joes, Spirit, CoverGirl, and Snake Eyes, have gone to see the some local law enforcement to talk to a cop about, one of these kidnapped kids. And the cop is leaning casually against his own desk, and he's turning towards this very, very attractive blonde with, like, very pretty, like, short model blonde hair and, like, very, very cool designer expensive glasses or sunglasses. And it took me a while to figure out that this is Snake Eyes. And the cop says, "Woo, that's a nasty nick you got across your face there. How'd that happen? Desert storm?" And then the next panel, because it's 2003 and Corey Hampshire is inking, I think, with a Micron pen, there are a bunch of lines on Snake Eyes' face. Like, just that style of inking, which, this is not like John Romita on Spider-Man in the 70s. And this is not like Mike Mignola with, like, big sort of rocky blocks and chunks. This is like, I've got a pen, and I'm going to draw, like, little lines for the cheekbones and the forehead and the bridge of the nose. And so I actually don't see a nasty nick on Snake Eyes' face here. I just see some lines. I honestly did not know to what scar or lines the art is referring. I appreciate the attempt here where Snake Eyes isn't talking back because he doesn't speak. And so the cop says from off panel, "Fine, don't tell me." But it's like, what? A couple pages later, 1 page later, I can see, I think, the scar we're talking about. It's still not entirely clear. And
on the bottom right hand corner of that same first page, it kind of is a little bit more defined because there's fewer lines on his face. But
okay,
between the inker and the colorist, I think that scar really isn't kind of properly signaled to the reader.
Yeah, when Snake Eyes' face is revealed by Mark Bright and Randy Emerlin in issue 93, his scars, there's a thickness to them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a misstep. Yeah, so this scar is obviously the scar from Snake Eyes' battle with Storm Shadow when Storm Shadow slices his mask, and then he retaliates with a long burst on his Uzi. And so this, so that's where that scar is from. But it also kind of takes away any doubt as to kind of the status of Snake Eyes' face. So you remember when,
right? I was just going to say that.
In those first few issues, it was like, has Snake Eyes still got the damage? And when he was doing that proposal to Scarlet, and he just looked like a, all American, blonde haired hunk with holding out the ring. Was that his face? Was it his was it a mask? So I think that clarifies in my mind the mystery of the first few issues where they're not showing Snake Eyes' face. He's wrapping it up in bandages. That's to disguise the fact that actually his face is undamaged. When he's then proposing to Scarlet, you can see his face. That is his real face. It's undamaged. And here now, when we see him, he's not wearing a mask because we can tell that because he has got a scar on his unmasked face from where he was slashed by Storm Shadow, which I guess makes that injury from Storm Shadow slightly more egregious because it isn't just another scar on his face. This is the one imperfection to his otherwise beautiful face.
Poor guy just can't win.
He can't get a break.
Nah.
I've got one more little like storytelling thing that doesn't quite work for me. On page 13, the Joes are now knocking on a second door of a parent whose kid they're investigating. And this dad opens the door. What do you want? Who are you people? And he's holding a shotgun. And Snake Eyes in the next panel sort of reacting, and CoverGirl has her hands up like, whoa, 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 it's okay. And then they're stepping into the house in the final panel, and Spirit has his arm around the dad's like shoulders, which is way too familiar. It's like, don't touch that man you've never met before. But says, I'm sorry, I've been a wreck all week. The cops quit pulling surveillance on the house yesterday, and it's got my nerves firing on all cylinders. And Snake Eyes is, I think the idea here is Snake Eyes is looking back out the open doorway to make sure they're not being followed, or just to take a last peek. And Snake Eyes is holding the shotgun and is emptying the shotgun of its shells. And I don't quite know. I think Snake Eyes is emptying the weapon so it's not loaded. And I don't know a lot about shotguns. You have to have it upside down. Can you get all 4 shells out in one pump? I appreciate the attempt here to do a very like G.I. Joe thing, a very specific thing with a very specific weapon, to render it more or less effective. But the drawing here is just anemic, and I don't fully understand what's happening.
You got it. I think that's exactly what. I mean, the storytelling's not great, but that's what's happening. The dad seems to acquiesce really quickly. That's the thing. And his character. There's another scene later where you just think that's not the right reaction that he should have. But to your question about shotgun, it doesn't have to be up and down to empty it. It can be any way. You just have to pump that. They go one at a time. You're not going to do 4 at a time. I didn't even realize that's what was going on in that panel. I just thought, why is Snake Eyes holding the gun now? All of a sudden, it seems like there's at least one panel that's missing there. You're right. Spirit wouldn't, and it goes back to like the first scene with Spirit kind of flirting with CoverGirl. That's not something that Spirit would do. He's also not going to put his arm around a stranger.
And CoverGirl puts her hands on the previous mom's shoulders in the previous scene where they're investigating the previous kid who's missing.
Yeah,
it's like, stop touching people, everyone.
And why aren't you wearing masks? It's the before times.
Like I said, there was a spot where the guy walks in the room, and the Joes are in the second in Alexander's room, and he walks in and he's like, officers, agents, my wife, I called her cell phone and there was screaming, some struggle, and we lost contact. Dude, no, he'd be like yelling. He would be showing probably some kind of, if not necessarily extreme emotion or physical movement. He's not just going to be standing there with his eyes bugged out. And then the very next panel, or the first panel on the next page, again, he's just kind of standing there like, what do you want on this pizza? I mean, the storytelling's not good in those spots.
I think back to a drawing that John Buscema drew in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. There's a page in this book where Stan Lee and John Buscema have it's like James Jonah Jameson is on the phone, and then was it Dr. Doom crashes through the wall, and then some Avengers are there. I forget, but it's 6 panels of continuity with no dialogue or narration, and it's all well drawn and clearly told, but there's no oomph to it. And then he draws it a second time where he tips the camera up, he tips the camera down. He has like Dr. Doom, not just like with one raised, or JJJ, not with just one raised fist, but like he's sort of like thrusting himself off of his desk as if to pound the desk.
Yeah, more gesturing.
That in comics you exaggerate, and there's no exaggeration here.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Obviously, most people our age probably have that book. I've had a couple different copies of it, but yeah, it's like I said, I'm not gonna bust on Seeley too much. Like Mark mentioned, they wanted him to do the book initially, and I think it was Seeley himself, wasn't it, who said, "I don't think I'm ready for that yet." He maybe still was not quite ready. His art's not bad. It's just not where it needs to be.
And this, this is a fill-in. This is him in between the new main artist, Brandon Badeau, doing one issue, and I guess getting his first taster of G.I. Joe. And I'm prepared to give him a bit of a pass on this one.
Yeah.
Poor dad. He's somewhat in shell shock. He's drinking. He's not all there, and yeah.
We finally
I can follow it. It's it's maybe not the most elegant storytelling or execution, but I don't think it disrupts the flow too much.
Yeah, there were no parts when I didn't understand what was going on. I missed some things, like Snake Eyes emptying the shotgun, but I didn't ever have to go back to the previous page and say, did I miss a panel or did I skip a page? And with other issues, we've had to do that.
I don't know if Blaylock had the time. I don't think he had the inclination by issue 16, but I think this might have benefited from his layouts. If
I agree.
Seeley had been drawing on top of Blaylock's more of his poses. In the final scene on the second to last page, we finally, I feel like this is something that the three of us have been building towards. We finally see Snake Eyes standing next to Spirit in his new costume that looks like a Snake Eyes costume.
Yeah.
And so we have, it's one thing if all the Joes are lined up and Snake Eyes is somewhere else or in his civilian clothes and Spirit is in his all black costume, which I don't think is different enough from a Snake Eyes costume. It's another thing if the two of them are not only standing in the same panel together, Snake Eyes' arm is actually in front of and overlapping Spirit. And I think this is again, I'm still surprised that people who voted on Facebook, more of them liked Spirit's Snake Eyes-ish costume than not. But it's some more distinction. I think this panel is evidence for my argument from a couple weeks back.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Any other things to call out before we go into I Spy?
I feel like if Hannibal were a real bad guy, and by that I don't just mean I'm one of the bad guys. I mean like a evil, almost sociopath. He's getting ready to drop the mom over the cliff, and then the car pulls up. And they're right on the cliff, man. He could have just pushed that lady over. That would have been like, whoa, he just, but now the Joes come in time and they save her. But maybe we're not quite to the G.I. Joe Cobra number 3 kind of shocking violence yet.
Mm-hmm. I think the point I'm taking from this observation, Jay, is that the teenager isn't fleshed out enough. That though the story isn't rushed at the end, right. Though that the story isn't rushed at the end, because some previous Devil's Due stories have been rushed by the final 2 pages. I think this character is rushed.
Yeah, I feel like this could have just been any character. It could have been, like the guys in black suits that we saw in the last story arc. It could have just been nameless.
The scene with the jugglers does try to set it up, right?
And that adds to the kind of mystery. You're like, well, what part do they have in this?
Remember the young boy we tried that with? He'd appear to be 16 or 17 now.
Right. So obviously we're led to believe that this is that character.
Yeah, and appear is in bold as well.
He'd appear to be 16 or 17 now.
Suggesting that he isn't 16 or 17, but that's the age that he would appear to look like. So, pointing towards some sort of accelerated clone technology or something along those lines, perhaps.
Trickery and chicanery.
I think he's an intern for Dr. Mindbender's lingering dental practice, and he's lied about his age, right? He's actually 25, but to get the teenage high school internship, right? He's like, "Well, I look so young, Dr. Mindbender."
Okay, cool.
I spy with my little eye.
I spy on
Optimus
page...
Prime sitting on a bookshelf.
That's the one I was going to do. But he's colored. I'm going to go a step further. He's colored like Blades. He's colored like the red and white Protectobot Autobot who's a helicopter.
Is that it, or is he colored like Ultra Magnus? No, I forget what color Ultra Magnus was.
Yeah, I spy on the bookshelf next to the transformer that all of the books are on sort of stacked in the wrong way. So lettering should flow down from top to bottom in Western English-speaking book spines. So if you were to stack them with the letters running from bottom to top, that would be because the cover would be on the left, upside down.
The kid's 10. We'll let him have it.
I spy on the next page that Firewall is wearing a pink t-shirt with the Gem logo. Gem, who is truly outrageous and whose fashion and music are contagious.
Just further echoing or illustrating that she has no taste. Back on the kid's bed, there's like a little Caesar, like a plush.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Almost like the little Caesars guy, but
pizza.
Yeah. There's a lot of little things like that.
On that same panel on the bottom left, there's like a Roman helmet.
Yeah, the helmet and a tank, and there's a helicopter on the thing.
I think and the poster in that bedroom behind the mom, it says Flags of the World, and there's some little rectangles under it. And then to the right of her shoulder above the bed, it looks like some Romans on the right or some soldiers on the left, some kind of meeting or a surrender is being brokered.
I mean, I'm sure that it's got to be some kind of an actual thing that he's.
Yeah, certainly Blaylock's script here would have called out 5 or 10 items to populate this bedroom that are much smaller and more subtle than the book titles that we're gonna see in the next.
And of course,
panel.
Risk is like a military strategy board game kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of neat little things in here.
This isn't an I Spy. This is a. Can you guys clarify this for me? So that's the second scene where they're interviewing a parent about a missing kid, and they're in the second kid's bedroom, and CoverGirl's sitting on the kid's bed, also which you wouldn't do. Snake Eyes is standing there, and Spirit is looking at a drafting table with some paper taped to it, and CoverGirl says, well, at least this one isn't as creepy as the last kid's room. His mother obviously has more to do with the decoration. And then Spirit says, still, this boy draws the same bizarre pictures that Snake Eyes saw in Julius's sketchbook. I believe you used your silent ninja paper ripping tactics on that one. And then CoverGirl says, funny. And I read that and I thought, is this a joke? I don't understand it. And I went back to that previous scene where the mom has brought them into the kid's bedroom, and Snake Eyes sees an unusual drawing on a pad. And okay, I think I know what this is. That panel where CoverGirl has her hands on the mom's shoulder and she's trying to reassure the mother. The mother doesn't see that Snake Eyes is actually swiping that piece of paper from the kid's pad. So he's either like removing evidence from not a crime scene, but he's stealing something from the kid's room. So Spirit is telling the audience that's reading the comic. All right, that didn't quite click for me the first time.
Yes,
I didn't understand sort of why the jokey name, like silent ninja paper ripping tactics.
Yeah, I just thought it was a bad joke.
So Snake Eyes is, obviously just taken the paper while the back's turned and yoinked it. But
I didn't think that was something that
has...
needed to be done, with subterfuge. I mean, why would they have to act like that was something that he snuck out of there?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think Spirit's just pointing out that he can't just do it he can't just take the paper. He has to do it in a stealthy, ninja-y way. So
if they'd asked the mom, I'm sure she would have said yes. Since they didn't,
sure.
The plot point ends up being like the stealthy thing. Okay. Yes. Sorry. Back to I Spy.
So I spied Detective Kirkland. So I just wondered whether that might be a little Easter egg reference to Boyd Kirkland, the G.I. Joe storyboard artist. I don't know how common a surname that is.
Or is James Kirkland someone that one of the Devils people knew, or like a fan?
Could be. It seems, it must be something. I don't think that would be pinched out of the air. Okay, did anyone have any errors detected?
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
So I'll go with the one that I spotted. So the very, very last page of the issue, we have Dr. Mindbender in his mwahaha final moment. Now he will come to us, and his top lip is coloured white, as if to make two sets of teeth coming together. That should be coloured flesh tone, with the teeth beneath it. You can see his gums and stuff on the sitting beneath the lip. Petty, I know, but even I can get petty about colouring too.
You're right, though. I totally just read that as top and bottom teeth.
And I think it would, it would look better executed. I think with it being teeth.
Since we've talked about the cover and the back cover, we should talk about the 1.5 pinups in the issue.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the new G.I. Joe Pit. I don't know that they should have bothered.
That's kind of uninspiring.
Yeah, that's an apt review. So for those of you not holding the comic in front of you, you get to the final page. There's this 2/3 splash of Dr. Mindbender rubbing his hands together. He's underlit. Now he will come to us. Good, exciting ending. And then you turn the comic sideways. It's mostly black. There's sort of this green grid, like tech effect. And there's just sort of like a big like room with a couple of copy and paste, like sort of technically drawn tanks, these little white lines, and a couple call outs like exit to main elevator shaft and staging area and fire disposal equipment. Okay. And in the top right, there's a key which shows that this is level 1 below the surface, and that there are 4 more levels below it, which I guess this maybe we'll get in future issues.
Yes. 4 more underwhelming splashes of the schematics of the pit.
This has nothing on the... So, the schematic of the pit from issue 1, which gets reprinted in yearbook 1, which gets updated some years later. And I don't remember the IDW issue, but sometime like 2 years ago, the Joes are talking through the layout of the new pit. And it was like a Shannon Gallant redraw of like a new Larry Hama schematic.
Yeah.
This is not that. And then 2 pages of letters, and then a full page Zanya pinup, penciled by Tim Seeley and inked by Tim Seeley. And there seems to be a signature for the colorist, but I mean it's probably hi-fi. Anyway, a lot of green, background's way too busy, way too many like highlights and shadows on this, as if she's standing in a studio for a photographer with a like tarp behind her, and the tarp has printed on it an image of this swamp, and they're like umbrella studio photographer lights like 3 feet above her to the right and left behind the camera. I like the drawing. I like that she's holding a funny prop. I like that there's an alligator. The color way overdone.
Yeah, the color washes a lot of it out. I'd like to see it in black and white. I mean, not that I think it's spectacular, but when you add that much, it just...
And this is just issue 16. It's nothing, it's not some sort of particular celebration issue or anything like that. So it's nice that they are, making the effort to be including some of these little extras like the pit page, even if it's a little underwhelming. And this splash page, and they've done a couple of others ones that we've not particularly called out. There was one of Roadblock earlier on in the run, for example. It's maybe not the most exciting, but it's nice that they're continuing to invest and take the time to add these little flourishes to the book, because they don't need to.
This issue is a full 22 pages, plus 2 pages of letters, plus the pit diagram, plus the Zanya pinup. So this issue, I guess, has just a couple fewer ads for other Devil's Due and Image comics. It's worth noting, if you got the original comic book in front of you rather than a digital file or the paperback collection, that there are two G.I. Joe ads, one for an upcoming issue of the spin-off and one for the next issue of the main monthly. There's a pinup for there's an ad, for a Micronauts spin-off drawn by Steve Kurth, who we know from G.I. Joe, and there's an ad for the Micronauts series that Devil's Due was publishing at the same time, which I have not been keeping up with sort of in the original timeline of us reading these Devil's Due G.I. Joe comics. And at this point, they're advertising issue 7 of Micronauts, and it's drawn by Stefano Caselli, who a couple years later takes over G.I. Joe. And then there's on the inside back cover, there's a teaser ad for the first Devil's Due G.I. Joe Transformers crossover.
Yeah, June 2003. So I think this issue was March 2003. So yeah, a few months away. Very good. Let's see, what else did you have any favorite line of dialogue that you wanted to call out?
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
I can't think of anything in particular that stood out to me as far as good dialogue. We've pointed out, a couple spots of bad dialogue.
Okay,
but nothing that really,
This isn't an amazing line of dialogue, but I did appreciate this because by page 5, I sort of thought, why are the Joes on this mission? This isn't for them. And this is before the scene with the jugglers where it's more hinted at. But they're interviewing this local cop, and he's not sure why they're there. Right? It's just a standard missing kid or kidnapping. And CoverGirl whispers to Snake Eyes and Spirit, if we're involved, you can bet this case is anything but... the cop has just said, it's a standard case. And CoverGirl says, if we're involved, you can bet this case is anything but standard. I like that all 3 ways that you can show that someone is whispering, all three good ways that you can show that someone is whispering in comics. I'm not going to mention the bad way yet. The word balloon is smaller. The lettering is smaller. And also, there's also a dashed line around the word balloon rather than a solid line. Modern comics sometimes have whispers in gray, like the black outline and the lettering is not black but gray. And I feel like half the time it's not clear enough. But I actually at this point in the story, I needed someone to say, oh yeah, something is going on, because this is not a normal G.I. Joe story.
Cool. So, Yo Joeage. I'll start. I enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed it more so than the last one. I like the sense of it doing something new and different and building this plot and intrigue that is something new to this book, that is kind of unexplored ground, and yeah, the Devil's Due era being something different, and different in a good way. So looking forward to the continuing issues, in part due to the breadcrumbs that have been dropped down here. So I will go in with a 7.
So, I gave the last arc a 7, and a lot of that was due to Badeau's artwork, and the fact that he's not here this time is really what's going to drag the score down for me. Like I said, I did enjoy this issue. I think that it's interesting, and it makes me want to read the next issue. But as far as there were a lot of panels in issue 15, like I said, that as I was reading it, I would just stop and think, wow, that's really good. How he did that. That's a nice angle. His shadows are really nice there. His figure work is really nice there. There was no instance of that in this book. And, comic books are a visual medium. So, I don't want to say subpar, because like I said, Seeley's not a bad artist. He's just inexperienced at this point. But I can't go from an issue that caught my eye several times to one that is just adequate. So 6 for me.
Okay, and Tim?
5.
Okay, seems to be the pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I gave the last arc a 5 as well, right? This is it's mostly the art. I continue to
it really
not
takes
like,
away from it.
And I should say, I don't think I liked anything Hi-Fi was coloring in 2003. And this style of color, like Chris Sotomayor at Marvel, Richard and Tanya Horry on Superman at DC, like the Ed McGuinness issues around 2003. Like, I don't like this kind of coloring. So it's not just like Hi-Fi bad, Hi-Fi bad. And I've already said plenty about the art. Seeley will get better. He's never going to get to amazing for me. 5. Maybe in a couple weeks I'll feel like this is a 4, but it's fine.
Okay, very good.
I might think less of it as time goes by. That's what I hear Tim saying.
I mean, I thought that way about some of the... Yes, I think sometimes in the moment I might be too generous.
Wow, harsh, dude.
There's a nitpick. Well, because, think about how much your favorite comics... I don't even mean like your favorite series, like a good issue of your favorite series. I mean like it's like if you know that if you were going to kick the bucket in a month and you're like, I'm going to reread some of my favorite comics. I'm going to like stay up a little late. I'm going to like skip work. I'm going to eat some candy bars, whatever it is. It's like, this is so far from that.
Oh yeah.
Like this is just a step past capable.
Well, it's like you said last time. Is it something that you would recommend to somebody? No. Yeah,
like this issue isn't...
Not without more of the story.
Right.
At least.
Let me find that. I forgot I had a nitpick on the cover. Spirit is looking at this piece of paper. Spirit's head is in front of the logo. His hand is in front of his head, and yet the piece of paper he's holding is behind the logo. And I get the sense that either Devil's Due and IDW have been, in the last 20 years, cautious about putting anything in front of the G.I. Joe logo type on the cover, or Hasbro, a different person at different times at Hasbro may have said, like, no, you can't, or you have to get special permission. And it happened pretty often, not like horrendously or significantly in the Marvel run, but that piece of paper that Spirit's holding sure needs to be in front of the E and the blue stripe.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's just running exactly parallel to the bottom line of the logo.
That would be a different problem I would have.
Yeah, tangents. Okay, very good. That's it. I think we're all wrapped up with talking about issue 16. So we can talk about something else.
J is here with a toy no fear, talking G.I. Joe collectibles. It's a favorite figure, let's pull the trigger, 3 3/4 inch or bigger. J.
Now, when again, Mark and I were talking about this issue before, a couple of days ago maybe, and he suggested that I do a comic pack number 16 that was released in 2006. In 2006, Hasbro and Devil's Due announced a Fans' Choice comic pack poll, which allowed fans to vote on their favorite figure or comic book combinations that would be produced. I'm not sure what the options were, but the one that won apparently was this one, and it was a 3-pack of figures with Spirit, CoverGirl, and on the package it actually says Hannibal Reborn, like that's the character's name. Now, Mark told me about this package before I read the issue, so I really didn't know anything about it. I said, I don't know who this guy is. I've never read these issues, so I don't know what I'm getting into. And Mark said, don't read his file card. So I didn't. So we're not going to even talk about that character. Also included in the pack is the spirit figure in the Snake Eyes cosplay. I've already expressed my dislike of that redesign, so that's a discussion for another day. That brings us basically to CoverGirl. CoverGirl's always been one of my favorite Joes. In fact, when I was a kid, I actually had two CoverGirl figures because one year, both of my grandparents on my dad's side and my mom's side gave me the Wolverine for Christmas. I didn't care. I thought that was really cool. That meant I had 24 missiles instead of 12 and two CoverGirls. And I think in my continuity, that was going on in my head, I kind of used them as twins, although I don't ever recall giving one of them a different name or an identity of her own. It just seemed like there were always two Wolverines. Now, the original CoverGirl was released in 1983, like I said, along with the Wolverine, which is, for anyone unaware, and I can't imagine who that would be, the Wolverine's kind of a flat tank with like a big missile array on top of it. Her first appearance was in Real American Hero number 16 from October of 1983, where she battled Cobra alongside her fellow Joes during a battle at the Treasury building in Washington. She made a few appearances in the comic over the years, but she was rarely one of the main characters. She appeared in a few episodes of the Sunbow cartoon, and there was a girl referred to as CoverGirl in the credits of 2009 film Rise of Cobra, which was killed by Zartan. I say that because that was just a terrible way to waste a character. She had one scene, she got stabbed in the back. Come on, she's a red shirt in that. It was ridiculous. Now, to my surprise, according to Yojo, and like I said, we don't have a whole lot to talk about here, there are only 4 official CoverGirl figures ever made, and that includes one that was made in 2013, thanks to the G.I. Joe Collectors Club figure service. Now, from the original 1983 file card, this gets into something that Mark alluded to a couple different times. File name Courtney Krieger, grade E4, birthplace Peoria, Illinois, primary specialty armor, secondary specialty AFV mechanics. Don't know what that is. CoverGirl was a high fashion model in Chicago and New York prior to enlistment, grew disillusioned with modeling, and enlisted to put new direction in her life. Attended armor school at Fort Knox and related tech schools. Proficient in diesel mechanics, gas turbine technology, qualified expert, law rocket, Dragon, AT missile, M16, and M1911A auto pistol. CoverGirl finds she must work against her beauty to prove herself. She's compelled to learn and master decidedly unfeminine disciplines. Her self-assurance and stunning good looks reduce most men to stuttering fools. The original CoverGirl figure had a brown jacket, tan shirt and pants, tall brown knee-high boots that had kind of an odd squarish toe on them. Her hair was short and kind of reddish brown in color. I've seen a lot of people online and in different podcasts and things say that they thought that this was one of the ugliest figures ever produced, and that it kind of really didn't live up to the CoverGirl idea. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, maybe the head was a little too large for the body, but I think that the designers were still trying to work out how to really make a good female face in this scale. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Scarlet figure that was released in the first wave, she had a much simpler face sculpt than CoverGirl.
Neither Scarlet nor CoverGirl could. That original V1 sculpt could really be called, a beauty. Really, to be fair to it.
But I don't think that they were necessarily ugly either. I mean, they're just kind of plain. Now, the figure that's in the CoverGirl figure that's released in this 3-pack is a pretty good update of the original figure design. She still has a brown leather jacket, a tan shirt and pants. Everything has been slightly tweaked to appear a little more modern and stylish. Now, unlike the original figure, the original CoverGirl, the jacket was real tightly sculpted. It was just part of her figure. And on this figure, it's removable. It's one of the ones where it's kind of like the jacket is a vest. So when you take the jacket off, the sleeves still are brown. And I think that's kind of weird looking. It doesn't really work for me. I think they should have just left it as part of the original sculpt. The head sculpt is dramatically different than the original 83 figure. The original CoverGirl, like I said, had short reddish brown hair. This figure has kind of long, sandy blonde hair, and they have tried to soften the facial features up a little bit. But I think that even in 2006, they still had a way to go before they were actually able to create an actual attractive female face sculpt. Other than that, there's a couple new items included with the 2006 figure. She has a pistol, and sculpted on the figure are dog tags, which the original one didn't have. Bottom line, is it a good figure? It's not one that I'm going to try to track down. You know, like I said, I do like CoverGirl. I think she's was always a good character, but not one that I would feel compelled to seek out every version of, which, like I said, there's only 4, so it wouldn't be hard to do. But it's not, it's just not that great of a figure. Like I said, in 2006, they still had a ways to go with a lot of these, with a lot of their manufacturing techniques. And I thought that really having a fan poll and choosing this issue in particular to be the one that would win, and that fans would say, yeah, make a 3-pack figure set from that. That baffled me, as much as people liking the spirit and the Snake Eyes cosplay.
I guess we only ever had the V1 CoverGirl in 1983, so this update in 2006 for a second version of the figure was probably somewhat overdue, and trying to capture some of that more glamorous side of CoverGirl. But more than that, the other character involved being Spirit, who had that outfit that everybody loves. The majority,
everybody except the guy doing the toy review.
Yeah, so it was a popular costume.
It just, to me, is uninspired. The original one, call it what you will, cultural appropriation. It had character, And,
this costume in black, it can be black. It just needs 2 more things.
It needs something. It's just boring.
I just want to refer to one thing that Jay mentioned. So the character who shows up in G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, who's referred to as CoverGirl, has sort of no dialogue and then is murdered in front of us, right? I also don't like that.
Yep.
And
that was one of the 4 CoverGirl figures, was the figure of her from that movie.
Separate from the toy line, a small fact regarding that I do appreciate is that the actor who was cast to play CoverGirl, Carolina Kurkova, is a model.
Yeah.
And though she has appeared a few times in TV and movies, like acting, she is a model. And I appreciate, it's like, well, we've got this Joe who's not going to do anything in this scene. And in the story, it's someone who's been a model, right? Let's cast someone attractive, right? I know lots of models get cast in movies and then they become actors that way. So this is not like a revelation, but if it was some kind of nod or acknowledgement rather than a coincidence, I appreciate that.
I mean, the treatment of that character in the movie is probably like number 3 or 4 in my list of 1,059 things wrong with The Rise of Cobra. It's right up there. I mean, just, it could have been anyone. It could have just been like I said, a red shirt, a green shirt. Why take a character that does have some history and, they make her a desk girl that gets killed. It's so disrespectful for me.
I'm realizing in looking at this Spirit Iron Knife figure that shows up in this 3-pack is a repaint of the 2005
it's a green one
Spirit figure. Yeah, who's all in green. And I had never put this together because I was not paying attention to the toy line that much in 2005, and I was not paying attention to the comic at in this second and third year of Devil's Due, that this green 2005 Spirit figure is the Devil's Due design, just with different colors. The way that the bandolier, I mean, he's got 1 or 2 details in addition, but the way that the bandolier is over his chest.
Oh yeah, for sure.
His knee pads and his very tall lace-up boots, and so to the extent that, I mean, Kamakura shows up in the comic, and then he gets a figure. So to the extent that Devil's Due is directly or indirectly influencing the toy line around 2001 to 2006. I always forget that, besides sort of the obvious, like, Kamakura got a figure, people like him.
One last thing I'll say about CoverGirl. Like I said, there have only been, including the fan service figure, 4 for figures, and I think that the fandom recognizes that as a lacking, and so you can find a lot of really nice custom cover girl figures online. I found 2 or 3 in particular that blew every Hasbro figure away. I mean, there's some really talented customizers out there that do nice work, and I just think put those people on the Hasbro payroll.
Go for it. Cool. So thank you, Jay. Good to talk about that comic pack. I remember it coming out back in the day. So let's move on to everyone's favorite segment. It's Inuenjoe.
This is how the story goes. Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking Inuenjoe.
If you are offended by words like
Sucking, flesh wound. Willy, Pete. Balls, crystal balls. Hypno shield.
whatever, take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's brick in a Prada handbag.
So a reminder that if you're in the right frame of mind, particularly a dirty frame of mind, then G.I. Joe names can sound a little bit sniggerful, which is a word. So what we do here is challenge. Have a challenge. Can I get through a list of 5 slightly dirty sounding G.I. Joe names without making either of my co-hosts titter?
Can I get through one?
Or indeed past 1. So you're both ready, unmuted, good, ready to begin. G.I. Joe Dick Animation. What? Oh dear. Horror Show. The Mass Device, which I imagine is a pump of some sort. Special Missions Brazil. Python Patrol, which I imagine is a girls' night out. That's 5. Okay, nothing.
I was smiling for 4 of those 5.
Oh, I was biting my tongue.
Come on.
You almost got me on
Dick Animation. What?
Almost got me on that one.
But that's not how you say it.
But that's how I did when I was a kid.
I thought Special Missions Brazil was good because it's so vague. It's so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Whereas the Mass Device is not. Again, I just think of Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, yeah. Austin Powers.
This sort of thing's not my bag, baby. One book. Yeah.
One book. This thing's my bag. Baby. Yeah. Excellent. Well done. Credit to you. I wrote
Tim.
these. I dug these out, wrote them down, read them in advance. I'm rereading them and still can't quite manage to keep a straight face. So how you do it?
He's making the list going, this'll get him. I know this'll be the one. Jail crack.
I've got one on my list, which I'm thinking, yes, I'm really proud of that one. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. So that was that, and I think we're all done. So next time on Talking Joe Disavowed, we will be back in 2 weeks' time to be covering Devil's Due issues 17 to 19, which is a 3-parter called The Cabal.
Now, just real quick, does that, I don't want you to spoil too much, but does that kind of continue this storyline?
I think that plays more into that Baroness subplot where she was kidnapped. But yeah, I've not read it in a long time, so I don't know exactly what is included. So yeah, it will be fairly new to me because I've almost entirely forgotten the plot of some of these. And then hopefully with shipping dates and whatnot, we'll be back covering ARAH issue 281, which is the start of the all-new arc post those specials that we've been seeing. So it is So, Murder by Assassination Part 1, a brand new arc and a brand new character. In the aftermath of the chaotic events of Snake Hunt, the Joes are in a tough spot with the brass in Washington, D.C. Called to testify before a confidential subcommittee intent on investigating the off-the-books mission, a small group of Joes find themselves embroiled in an entirely different kind of investigation. The murder mystery kind. Living legend Larry Hama and superstar artist Andrew Griffiths are on board, as well as a brand new Joe whose origin will be seen for the first time. Codename Sherlock. So, yeah, looking forward to that one. You can find us on all of the usual places, talkingjoe.co.uk. Our website has all of those places, so links to the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube accounts, as well as contact details for email and Patreon, which can also be found patreon.com/talkingjoe. So big thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam and Jay, who are all getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive Patreon-only content. Phew. You can find the guys in their normal places. Tim can be found at
arealamericanbook.com.
And G.I.J. can be found
on Facebook. Look for me under J. Cordray or Break Room Sketches.
And yeah, do head on over to our Facebook page for Talking Joe if you've not yet done so, and get involved in all of the discussion there, including possibly a return for our listeners' questions. Woo!
A lot of good discussion over there sometimes.
Yeah, there's a good bunch of guys, and yeah, lots of interesting comments, feedback. SJub7 calling me out on the mistakes that I made. All good stuff. So when all is said and done, you can catch us down the road.
Because we've been Talking Joe.
And we're all out of Joes.
Laters.